Matic asks best and worst. We're going to go through a list of directors and talk about their best and their worst. First up, Martin Scorsese. For best, I'm going to go with Taxi Driver. Now, before I go into this, I got to say, I'm not the biggest Scorsese fan, so it's not like I've watched all of his movies. It's not like I've watched any of them a bunch of times, but I've seen most of them at least one time. And so when I say Taxi Driver, I say that not because it's this movie I've rewatched 20 times, but more so because it's the one that stuck with me and just was memorable, moved me, interested in me, like confused me, disturbed me. And that's the one that kind of stuck. Whereas, some of the other ones that are also great, like Goodfellas, it just didn't stick with me in the times I've seen it. And I know it's a great movie. I know that I probably need to rewatch it now that I'm grown up. But if I'm going based off of my experiences watching up to this point, Taxi Driver. As for the worst, I'm going to go with The Last Temptation of Christ. So naturally I'm going to be biased as a Christian, but it's the sort of movie I can't watch without turn off my brain. I just watch it through the lens of, what are you doing here? Well, like, what is this? Why does this exist? And so for that reason, I really did not care for it, didn't really like the direction it went. There was nothing in particular that I liked about it other than it was like, well, this is kind of interesting, but that's about it. Best and worst for Steven Spielberg. This one's really tough because in my mind, Steven Spielberg has made the best of multiple genres. So he's made the best action movie or best adventure movie in Raiders of the Lost Ark. He's made one of the best dramas of all time in Schindler's List. He's made one of the best thrillers of all time in Jurassic Park. And so when you say, what's the best movie by Steven Spielberg, you really are kind of comparing apples and oranges because he's got a lot of stuff that's up here in the best category. So I don't know which one to pick out of those. If you're just going for pure, absolute, just quality film that deserved to win a bunch of awards, you'd go with Schindler's List. I don't want to watch Schindler's List anytime soon. I mean, 10 years from now, my kid will be a teenager and I'll be like, hey man, you got to watch Schindler's List. And I sit down with him, but I don't want to watch it tomorrow. I don't want to watch it next year. And so, I'd go with Raiders of the Lost Ark or Jurassic Park. As for worst, also kind of tricky. I haven't seen 1941. I hear that that's kind of the one that, people references as kind of his big, gigantic flop that wasn't very good, but I haven't seen it. Some people list The Terminal off as his worst. For me, The Terminal was just kind of like a kind of movie. He did a very strange film for him in that it was so small scale and just kind of a movie. It's just forgettable for me, so I wouldn't think worst when I think about it. So the two that come to mind when I think of a movie that just wasted potential, should have been so much better, ruined my childhood. Okay, it didn't ruin my childhood, but not happy with what it did, would be Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls. Naturally, the obvious pick for one of Steven Spielberg's worst. For me, it's kind of a fun movie, though. So then I think, what's a movie that I watched, did not enjoy watching it, did not want to watch it again, and I'm going to go with AI, artificial intelligence. It always struck me as an odd choice to go from Kubrick to Spielberg. And I guess they were working on it, developing it all along, and okay, fair enough. At the end of the day, those are two directors that I just don't think would mesh at any point in time, even if they'd worked together all the way on the process on it. Steven Spielberg stepping in on it, it didn't work for me. It was very unsettling in an unpleasant way, not in an interesting way. So I did not like that experience at all. So I'm going to go with AI. Next up on our list, best and worst, Christopher Nolan. Like with all these are all pretty tricky for me. If we're going based off of just kind of best crafted movie overall, no curve, I would go with The Dark Knight. If we're going with a movie factoring in his ambition, because as his movies have gone along, he's gotten more and more ambitious, sometimes in storytelling, in the scope, in the scale. If we're doing that, I would go with Inception. I think there's elements to Inception that might not have the rewatchability or is The Dark Knight, but the ambition, just how perfectly crafted the script is, the creativity, how it's visualized, how it's all put together, how all of these elements are so wonderfully crafted to tell a coherent story out of something so complex and trippy, go with Inception. So my leaning is towards Inception. I'm more likely to rewatch The Dark Knight. As for his worst, I think, and I haven't rewatched this one since I first saw it in like the year 2003, but The Following, which is his first movie. It's black and white. I don't even really remember it. So if I rewatched it, maybe I would rank it differently, but I watched it, even before Batman Begins came out. I was an early adopter. I saw Memento in the theater back in 2000, saw Insomnia in the theater, and then I checked out The Following, and I was like, I don't like this much as those other two. And so maybe I would rate it differently if I rewatched it. But that's the one that comes to mind. Of the ones of his current actual era that because people normally forget about The Following, I go with Insomnia just because it didn't have that ambition that I talked about. It didn't have the big scale, didn't have the unique storytelling of a Memento, Prestige, and so it just kind of felt like, oh, that was a solid drama. That's not to say it's bad. At worst, in this situation, is really just to say the one that stuck with me the least memorable. But speaking of someone that actually has a worst that is bad, best and worst of Michael Bay. For best, I'm going to go with Armageddon. So a lot of people go with The Rock, and I've just never been as big of a fan of The Rock as most people are. I really enjoy the movie. I think it's really good. But of the era of Nicolas Cage action movies, he did a trilogy in The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off. The Rock was always my third favorite of those three. I mean, it was my least favorite of the three. And I've probably come to appreciate it more as time has passed. And that's not to say it's bad. It's just not the one I lean towards. And so I just naturally kind of bring it down a little bit. But Armageddon is a movie I remember from when I was in high school. That's an example of how you do a dumb blockbuster right. I think it's very funny. It's fun. It's exciting. It shamelessly tugs at heartstrings. It's sentimental. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. But it's just a fun time at the movies. It's a fun time at home. And incredible cast. I mean, you just look at that cast and I mean, it's just such a great group of people to want to spend time with. If you're going to send oil drillers up to a meteor or asteroid, whichever one it was, and try and blow it up, that's the crew you get for it. So all around, just a lot of fun. How to do a dumb blockbuster right, which leads me to how to do it wrong, which would be Transformers Age of Extinction, which I watched a month or two ago. And I mean, it's kind of mind numbing to watch it. I mean, just sitting there like, is this still going on? Why is this movie 2 hours and 45 minutes long? And I mean, I was watching it, I was kind of timing it because I was writing notes down. I was thinking about doing a video about it, and maybe I still will, but you're 45 minutes into the movie and you're like, what's happened? Like, we've just been at this farmhouse while Mark Wahlberg is Mark Wahlberging. Hey man, I'm inventing stuff. And just talking about stuff. You're like, I don't know what's happening. There's like one scene in there that indicates what the plot is. And you're almost an hour into the movie. And then I think you go to Chicago or something like that, or Detroit. I know they filmed it in Detroit because they could blow up buildings for cheap. And then you're just there for an hour and like just wondering what's happening. Why is this action sequence still going on? I mean, it's 45 minutes long of just CGI stuff, and they're up on a spaceship and there's a car chase and stuff's happening, but there's so little plot happening. It's just noise on the screen. It starts off with, I think it's TJ Miller's his name, and he's kind of the plucky sidekick character at the beginning of the movie, and he's kind of funny. And I think they had him written to be the boyfriend of the daughter. And then as they started going through the movie, they're like, wait, we can't have a 35-year-old man dating a high schooler and explain that away. So then they kill off his character and a boyfriend character. This is entirely my theory. And they replace him with this other guy that's not funny, except he's supposed to be the funny guy, kind of replacing what TJ Miller was. And he's kind of like sassing back to Mark Wahlberg. And you're like, what? Where did this guy come from? Why is he here? I don't like this character at all. So anyway, Age of Extinction, it was just as bad as people told me it was. Next one, Tarantino. Best of Tarantino, I'm going to go with Pulp Fiction. I think that's just kind of a special film in kind of movie history, in the way it was so memorable, so quotable, interesting storytelling techniques, revival of careers, kind of really inventing Samuel L. Jackson's career as the guy that we've known him as for the last 22 years. Just a really special place in film history. And like so I went to go see Die Hard in the theater a week ago. And before the movie started, the theater always I was at, it's called Flicks Brewhouse. They show clips from other movies the actors are in, and so they're showing clips from Bruce Willis movies. And my wife was like, oh, that's right, he's in this. And she'd forgotten Bruce Willis was in Pulp Fiction. And I mean, it's just so many great things in it that every time I watch it, I do, like, you remember things, you forgot about things. And just a really special movie. Worst Tarantino movie, I'm going to go with Kill Bill Part 2. After Kill Bill Part 1, I was kind of expecting a different movie than two people sitting down and talking. And then you get to the end of the movie and you're like, all right, is like the last movie had this gigantic, massive battle scene. And we've got David Carradine here. This is the guy that starred in the show Kung Fu. More importantly, this is the guy that starred in the show Kung Fu, The Legend Continues from my childhood. And then, I mean, it's just kind of very anticlimactic as a film and as a whole, but just especially like the finale of it. I mean, it was just all my memories of it are two people sitting at a table like, how is this the follow-up to this other? What? I don't understand. So I did not like Kill Bill Part 2 at all. Best and worst of David Fincher. Best, I'm not like a big, gigantic Fincher fan. A lot of his movies are ones that, like Seven is a great movie. I don't have any desire to watch it anytime soon. Fight Club, I mean, I loved it around the year 2000 when it was the coolest movie to like, and you're supposed to, was it Chuck Palahniuk or something like that? You're supposed to love his books if you were, that era's version of a hipster. So, tried to be into that stuff. But I mean, it's not like a movie I want to watch today or anytime soon once again. And so just thinking through his movies, which one would I be interested in watching again now? And the one that came to mind was Gone Girl. I've only seen it once, but I mean, I really enjoyed the experience, liked that movie. So that's the one that comes to mind. I'm not set on that answer. However, when it comes to worst David Fincher film, I'm quite set, quite confident, and it's Alien 3. I hate that movie. Aliens is one of my favorite movies, and Alien 3 is a betrayal of Aliens that if you take Alien 3 as in the continuity, it ruins the movie Aliens as a movie. Just the entire tension and buildup of Aliens is the back and forth of will they, won't they live? Will she, won't she be able to save her? And that's what that movie was. That was the adventure of that movie. And so then if you start off Alien 3 with, oh, they took a nap and everybody's dead except her, you just robbed that entire movie of its victory. You just took a movie that had a big victorious finale, all this struggle to overcome odds, and then they took a nap and they died in their sleep. That, it's like unforgivable to me. I hate it when movies do that. I hate it when TV shows do that. And when they just have such a lack of understanding of, they're trying to be clever, they're trying to take things in a new direction, but in doing so, they cheapen what came before it, and Alien 3 is a really bad example of that. Best and worst Coen Brothers movies. I haven't seen enough to be able to give you a worst, but as for best, I would go with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I think I saw that 2 or 3 times in the theater. Just a lot of fun, quirky little movie. Something I really enjoyed that, it's based off the Odyssey. It was kind of when George Clooney was really becoming a movie star and transitioning from guy from ER that's in a few movies to like legitimate A-list actor guy. And so a lot of fun, great supporting cast, great music, just really memorable. So that's what I would go with. Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou?